welcome back into the thick of it. It's been pretty cold over the last evening. Ended up snowing quite heavily, and we've had a lovely layer of this white stuff, quite unknown for this city that I live in Daejeon, but it's rather beautiful. Anyway, I thought today what I'll do is make a video about, and it's really prompted by one question I had from one of my subscribers, is how to teach advanced level learners, particularly those that are wanting to improve their already very good English. And let's get started. Tip number one: think about the needs of your advanced level student, particularly those that want to improve their already very good language skills. I do this really by incorporating a needs analysis before a trial lesson, or with any students for that matter, whether it's in class or online. And it really highlights to me what students want to try and achieve with their courses, with their lessons. And currently I'm teaching maybe 2 or 3 very high level learners, and it can be a bit of a challenge, but if you know what the students are trying to achieve, then you'll have no oh my gosh, get on the path, there we go. You'll have no difficulty in understanding what students want to try and achieve with their English. The second tip is to really focus on fluency, and there's two aspects to teaching English. One is the emphasis on accuracy, so grammatical suitability, appropriateness, focusing on that. Then the other pendulum, the other aspect is fluency, and drawing away from accuracy, because if you're going to be teaching C1 level students, advanced level learners, then you're going to be wanting to teach less of grammar and focus more on fluency and appropriateness and naturalness, particularly when students at an advanced level already have a good ability for English. They know their grammar tenses and they just want to improve their naturalness when speaking. The next tip for me when teaching advanced level learners is to get learners to correct themselves. You don't want to correct them all the time. Give them the skills and try and get them to break through these fossilized errors that they all seem to have. Particularly, for example, I'm currently teaching a Mandarin speaker English who's probably C1, maybe C2, but they still return back to tense errors. And with Mandarin, from my limited knowledge with that language, is they don't necessarily have tenses, they focus more on context, and he still makes errors despite his very good ability of not using the correct tense or just using the present tense regardless. So try and get students to break that habit, and get them to become more aware of their fossilized errors, and that will certainly help when it comes down to teaching them and getting them to improve their self-awareness of teaching and learning, and certainly a key strength. So when one of my students ends up making a mistake like that Chinese student, I tend to highlight and underline that particular verb and get the student to consider what error they've made, and naturally they become aware of tense form and they correct it almost immediately but when producing the language, especially with speaking, then they're not really going to be focusing on their accuracy, and as I mentioned before, focus on the fluency, highlight those errors that students make, those habitual fossilized errors, and you'll be good to go. The next tip for me is kind of linked in to the previous tip of fossilized errors, and this one is to get students and learners to become more independent. So give them the tools necessary so they can really improve their language by themselves. Highlight specific aspects that they could incorporate into their language learning out of class or online lessons. Get them to be exposed as well to a range of different materials, so reading news articles, listening to the radio, and maybe reading blog posts that they're curious about. And set them a target, maybe give them a diary to fill in and complete in their own time, as this will certainly get them to reflect on their learning process, particularly during outside of their classes and that side of things. Anyway, I'm just looking, and there's a couple of ducks and things in the water here. Not sure if you can see it. Oh, they've gone. What was a heron? Stork? Something like that. And there's these beautiful little birds here. Almost no one's here because it's the Korean Lunar New Year, Seonnal. So I'm pretty fortunate to come out and not bump into anyone. There's been a few people, but there we go. Anyhow, going back to getting students to become independent learners. My gosh, look at these. Beautiful. Anyway, when it comes down to getting students to develop the tools necessary to become independent learners, help them, give them a sort of schedule to meet, and give them the ability to become accustomed of what's expected of them outside of their lessons, online classes, face-to-face classes. Give them a sort of diary to complete, as I mentioned, and they'll be more confident, enthusiastic with their language learning, and they'll see the progress that they make, particularly if they keep a diary. Everyone seems to be enjoying the snow. Apologies for the wind, it's rather windy as well. Anyhow, the fifth tip for teaching advanced level learners is to use authentic material. Learners, advanced level learners will feel a sense of progress and achievement when you come across authentic material. I certainly do when it comes down to Korean and authentic material exposed all the time. But when it comes down to authentic material, you'll give the learners the opportunity to be exposed to different material, C1 level material, authentic natural material. They'll be exposed to a variety of different language and grammar forms which will pique their interest, and they'll also feel much more accustomed to dealing with unknown language, particularly vocabulary, phrases that they're not really aware of. And when it comes down to that, you need to try and get students to know what to do when it comes down to unknown vocabulary. There's a variety of material that students could access, authentic material that is. It could be books, newspapers, radio, podcasts, that side of things. So when it comes down to that, then get them to access authentic material and they'll be happy. The next tip is about passive knowledge, and one thing that I've noticed particularly with language learners regardless of the level, but more so with advanced level learners, is that they have this passive knowledge that they need to try and use. They have a variety of vocabulary that can be used, but you need to give them time to access that passive knowledge. And certainly does help when you give students the opportunity and time to compose what they want to try and say. And when they come across, and connected with my previous point, language that is new for them and they want to try and understand, they can understand through context, but then trying to use the language is certainly a challenge when it comes down to that passive knowledge. So give students time, allow them the opportunity to compose what they want to say, and then provide them with the necessary feedback if required. So certainly focus on passive knowledge, getting students to think of more suitable ways to say what they want to say. The seventh tip that I would recommend when you're teaching high-level learners, particularly those that are very competent, is to focus more on emergent language. And what is emergent language? Well, emergent language is language that arises from context, conversation. So if you're going to be focusing on fluency, then make sure that you give special attention on what learners are going to be uttering. Give them feedback based on what they say. And for example, I had a student who had just returned back from their holidays. They, funnily enough, went skiing. It's just started snowing as well. And upon their arrival, they were trying to explain a variety of things that they got up to, but they didn't really have the vocabulary to explain what they did. And this is a high-level learner, advanced possibly, and so we looked at a variety of things such as skiing on-piste, off-piste, chair lifts, T-bar lifts, and that side of things. And it was a great opportunity to focus on that emergent language so that they're better placed to talk about that next time. And it's more immediate as well, so it's more memorable, and learners will become more aware of when they're in that situation again about talking about skiing. The sun's coming out as well, it's beautiful. So yeah, my seventh tip is to focus on emergent language and scaffold that emergent language so it becomes more authentic, natural and suitable in their English conversational usage. Tip number 8 is honesty when it comes down to teaching high-level learners. They may ask very difficult questions and nuances of English, why certain things are used in a certain way, why can you use like remote work, not isolated work when it comes down to online work. And depending on the student's ability themselves, they will ask those difficult questions, and you better be prepared to be honest. And if you're not sure of the answer, tell them. Say, I'm very sorry, let's have a look at it together. That's always been my policy. So if there's something you're not really sure of, then work through it, and you'll become more aware of the language that you're teaching, and the students will appreciate your honesty when it comes down to your knowledge of the language that you're teaching, because not everyone's an encyclopedia when it comes down to their teaching of the subject. My 9th point about teaching advanced learners is to deviate from the plan. Expect the unexpected. Now, as teachers, we kind of find our rhythm, we find our groove, and if you're going to be teaching advanced learners, then I would recommend not to stick too rigidly to what you've got planned, and try and accommodate what learners are wanting to do or talk about. So you may have some grammar that you want to focus on, or some language or idiomatic expressions, but then, like the student I mentioned, they came back from their holiday and all they wanted to do was talk about their skiing. And so I ditched my lesson on whatever it was I was doing, and I let them talk, I let them guide the lesson. And you've got to try and negotiate with the learners. If they don't want to do something, respect them. But then what I always do is, at the end of the lesson, is this is what I wanted to focus on, send it to them and they can review it in their own time. But then I also send them material, their spoken feedback and that side of things, so hopefully that gives them the confidence that they're in control. So try and deviate from the plan, don't go from A to B, but expect the unexpected, as I mentioned. Right, we're at the 10th final tip about teaching advanced learners, and I hope you've enjoyed it so far. So the final tip for me would be to teach pronunciation, focus heavily on pronunciation. So a lot of the advanced learners, they know their language, they know their grammar, they have a very good foundation of speaking, they know how to communicate effectively, but they probably need improvement with their pronunciation. And there's different things that I try and accommodate when it comes down to that, and one is to introduce the phonemic chart as soon as possible with learners. Excuse me, I'm getting achy. So yeah, introduce a phonemic chart, get learners aware of it and how to pronounce certain things in English. There's going to be certain things that are pronounced in their language that's not pronounced in English, and focus on connected speech, how things are, connect together, ellipsis and all that sort of thing, intonation, word stress, sentence stress. All this will certainly help when it comes down to getting learners, high-level learners, more fluent in their second language, in English, and it will give them that sort of motivation and sense of achievement when it comes down to communicating in that studied language. Anyway, I'm gonna head back. It's getting cold. I had to put my gloves on. It's rather cloudy. I think they mentioned or shouted hello. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed today's video. It was nice to get out away from the indoors, particularly during this gorgeous weather of snow, which is not very common in this area of Korea, Daejeon, and it's the best snow I've seen in this city since I arrived. And hopefully more snow to come. Anyhow, I'm gonna leave it there for now. Wishing everyone a happy Lunar New Year, Chinese New Year, Spring Festival, that side of things. And I'll see you in the next one. If you enjoyed today's video, hit that like button, subscribe, and I'll see you soon. Bye bye.